Hi all, thanks so much for taking time away from your business to join us here today. My name is Will Costerbeer and I have the privilege of leading the NAB Small Business Banking team across Victoria. On behalf of NAB, I wanted to welcome you to our Protecting Your Business How to Spot Scams webinar. This is part of a series of webinars we have prepared aimed at helping customers to succeed online. As the largest business bank in the country, we wanted to play a part in helping businesses get the most out of digital capability and hope you enjoy and get value from the series of webinars that we put together over the coming weeks. We've got small businesses dialing in from across the country, representing a diverse group of industries, business sizes and tenures, and we're really pleased that you could join us today. In a moment, I'm going to hand over to our guest presenter, Tara McCarthy, who will share tools and knowledge to help protect yourselves online. The session will go for around about an hour, and if you've got any questions along the way, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the webinar window to ask a question, and we'll cover those off at the end of the presentation. Before we get started, we did want to share our contact details and encourage you to connect with us with any needs that you might have. You can speak directly to us on the phone or set up an appointment via Zoom or even a face-to-face meeting at a convenient time and location to you. We also have a dedicated hub on our website for our small business community. Here you'll find a whole bunch of tools, guides and product information to help you through any stage of your business. Now I'd like to introduce you to Tara McCarthy. Tara is a senior consultant in our enterprise security advisory and awareness team here at NAB. She's been working in the banking and finance industry for over 15 years. And in the last 7 years, she's specialised in fraud and security. She's passionate around educating and empowering NAB employees, customers, and the community to help keep themselves as safe as possible online and in the physical world. Tara, over to you. Let's get started.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Will. That's a lovely introduction. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And a little cheeky hi to Denise. I can see you're an attendee. I used to work with Denise in Small Business Central, so great to see you joining us today. So as Will indicated, my name's Tara. I work for NAB's Enterprise Security team, and my role in NAB is to help bankers and customers understand what is happening in the security environment and provide tips on how to stay safe. So I just want to do a quick check-in that everyone can see my screen. It says NAB Cybersecurity and Fraud. Thumbs up there. Yep, fantastic. Thanks, Jennifer. So I work with a lot of really smart technical people who help NAB defend against the threats relating to our physical, product and cyber security and to keep our bank and customers' information and money safe. My team focuses on education and awareness for people. Criminals are targeting individuals to help the success of their activities. How so? This is what we're going to explore today. And also a spoiler alert, we're not going to talk about anything brand new here today. This will all be quite familiar content, but what we're aiming to do is dig a little bit deeper into some of these topics and connect a few of the dots. All right, so let's have a look at what are we going to cover off today. So who are the cyber criminals, the cost of cybercrime for Australians, the threats, phishing, the criminal marketplace, clickbait, malware, ransomware, email compromise, social engineering, safeguards, how to report, and where to go for more information. So as Will indicated, if you've got questions, please just pose them in the Q&A and then we can address them at the end of the session. Okay, so who are the cyber criminals? So if, I guess, media view or our understanding of cyber criminals, they always look like this person, right? Someone in a hoodie, they eat pizza, they live with their parents, but basically it's an individual in a darkened room doing something mysterious on a computer. When in actual fact, the cyber criminals are run like normal businesses. So the threat that we're facing into is not that of individuals targeting other individuals, but it is of highly organized and adaptable profit-driven businesses. So they have staff who have KPIs just like we do at NAB, or you probably do in your business. They have graduate programs, they work in shifts, they get businesses. So it's really looking, cybercrime is actually looking at organized crime that are targeting people globally, all over the world, the cyber criminals are targeting. So what does it mean for us in Australia, these cyber criminals? So we know cybercrime is an increasing threat, and we see the numbers increasing year on year. If, you know, everyone will probably be aware that the federal government has recently announced its Cyber 2020 strategy, in which it's invested $1.6 billion towards supporting Australian businesses and consumers in combating this cyber threat. So let's have a little bit of a look at what this means from a monetary perspective. And I'd just like to point out at this stage that we often talk about cybercrime and we monetize it. And we kind of consider it to just be around what is our financial impact. And I just also want us to consider that cybercrime can have impacts not only on us financially, but on our reputation and our emotions and our psychology. So there's a whole layer of things that come with cybercrime. Of course, financially, it's impactful, but there are many layers to that impact as well. Some of these stats point more towards that financial impact. So cybercrime costs the Australian economy up to $1 billion annually. Now, that's in direct costs. It's estimated by the Australian Cybercrime Security Centre that it may actually cost the Australian economy about $39 billion in overall costs. So that's the direct costs that you might have to pay or you've lost through cybercrime. Then it's about remediating it, insurances that are required in order to combat it. So $1 billion direct, maybe $39 billion estimated in overall costs. A report is made to report cyber every 10 minutes in Australia. It's had over 60,000 reports in the last 10 years that it's been sent up, and 50% of Australian small, medium businesses have been targeted by a cyber attack. So here's a little quote from Checkpoint Security. And it says, if there's one clear takeaway from 2019, it's that no organisation, big or small, is immune from a devastating cyber attack. And when it comes to defending against these threats, technical controls are really the number one defensive strategy that businesses need to employ. But people are the first line of the human defense. Cybercrime is not an IT problem. Everybody needs to be aware of the part that they play in defending against these attacks. And I just want to bring your attention to this final point here, which is the use of emails with malicious attachments or links continues to be the most common initial infection vector. So that's a fancy way of saying the most common way cybercrimes start is facilitated by phishing or spear phishing messages. Or you might call it spam or dodgy emails or scam emails. And when I say most, that's somewhere between 70 and 90% of all cybercrimes start with phishing. Rebecca, did you want to say something? No? Okay. So basically, that's why we say employees are the first line of defense, because your employees or yourself are going to be the people who are receiving those messages and then reacting to them. So basically, what is phishing? So these messages, so there might be an email, a phone call, or an SMS, and they're aimed specifically to trigger a response in the recipient. And it's generally looking for one of three responses. So to trigger someone to process a payment, to trigger someone to share personal information like login details for banking or emails or other services like Apple or PayPal, or to trigger someone to click a link that will then deliver malicious software onto the device. So, you know, in terms of context, you might be surprised to know that around 306 billion emails, and I'm not sure who counted that, are sent globally every single day. And it's estimated that 85% of that is spam or malicious in nature. And that's up from 65% last year. So not only is the volume increasing, but the percentage of those emails is increasing as well. So criminals are really using this as a mechanism to get into organizations and commit those crimes. So our virus protection, of course, does a great job of, and our filters do a great job of protecting and stopping these messages, but no filter can stop every single message. Some will hit an inbox, some will hit our mobile devices and into yours or a colleague or a family or a friend. So the key is, how can we identify something unusual? Oh, too far. How can we identify something unusual? Sorry, my computer's just gone crazy. How can we spot something unusual? And then what do we do with it? Like what is our action? If we think it's suspicious, then what is our action? So these are some of the things we're going to cover off today. So you'll be prepared for how to respond when and not if the cyber criminals target you at work or at home. Okay, we're going to start with a mechanism of phishing, which is credential phishing or personally identifiable information phishing. And we're going to use a NAB example because we work for NAB, and that's an easy way for us to walk you through the process. So what we want to do is start to identify what are the indicators or characteristics of phishing that you can be armed with so that you can not respond when these messages come to your inbox. So I guess the first thing to consider is criminals are getting better at what they do. So if we look at this one, for example, it's fairly well written. It's got NAB branding. There's some security jargon to trick people. The criminals are even just taking pictures off NAB's legitimate website and adding it onto their email just to add to the legitimacy of it. But if we start to kind of, uncover a few more of those characteristics, one, who's Maddie Jane? 19830, I think she definitely doesn't work for NAB, so that's suspicious to start with. It's asking for personal details, which I'm pretty sure is an indicator. Most organisations will not ask you to click on a link and provide personal information. There's an urgent request, and that's the threat or the reward. That's the trigger to make someone take an action. Of course, there's a link to click on because then that's going to be the start of the cybercrime activity. There's no NAB sign off and it's not personalised. What we say is one of the indicators that can be easy to understand is if you hover over a button or a link, then you can actually see where you're being redirected to. So in this instance, it's definitely not NAB, it's tiny.ie. So all of those flags are building up for me a suspicion that this is a dodgy message or this is phishing. And these are those characteristics. The sender's email address does not match the organisation. It requests personal details, offers a threat or reward, there's a link or button to click on, and there's no official sign-off. Generically addressed or not personalised. Now, we've looked at this in terms of a NAB-branded phishing email, but this could be under any organisational banner that criminals make these fake messages. So I guess to go that one step further is what happens here? What happens in these instances? So yes, okay, now we understand that this is suspicious. What are we going to do? So one, reporting it to the organisation that has sent it is really a primary factor. That way that organisation can take steps to remediate what happens next, and we'll have a look at that now. So basically for every lure, so in the lure is here, this is the message, but there's a URL attached to that. And the URL is a phishing site. So this is the associated phishing site with this message. You can see up the top, that's actually not nab.com.au, so not a genuine site. And the first thing this is looking for is the credentials. So this page is looking for someone to input their NAB ID and password. And honestly, how good does this page look? It actually looks exactly like NAB's genuine login page. But you can put whatever you want in there because this is not a genuine page. And then it will take you to another page, which looks surprisingly like the genuine NAB login internet banking. It is hosted in Kazakhstan, so that's another good indicator that it's not true. The criminals, though, have got the NAB credentials, but they're opportunistic and they want some more. And what they want is NAB ID, password, email address, password, card number, PIN number, CVV, date of birth, driver's license, Medicare card, first name, last name. We've moved from just credential theft into identity theft. And for someone who's been triggered to believe that that initial message was from NAB and then logs into the genuine NAB internet banking and then finds themselves on this page, they are likely to hand out this information because they're acting on instinct rather than that front brain where you're assessing and understanding. So a lot of people are filling out this information every single day. SMS phishing, though, is now far more common than email phishing. So basically there's the same factors and characteristics apply for SMS phishing as they do for the email phishing. So we've got some examples down here on the bottom right hand of the screen, and you'll see none of them are addressed to a recipient. They're asking for personal details. There's a threat attached to them, and the threat is your internet banking access has been suspended. Proceed to this fake NAB URL, and you can see they're all quite similar, but all have different URLs. And what the bank can do when they're reported to this and they're identified that this is here, they can bring it down, identify any IDs that might have been exposed, and remediate that for our customers. So reporting to the organisation, for us that's fish@nab.com.au, or a text number, we really recommend that. There's another step to this, I guess, which makes it even a little bit more tricky to understand, is the way that smartphone technology is somehow inadvertently enabling criminals to go about their crimes. So in this instance, we're having a conversation with a genuine customer, Vicky, and Vicky's basically saying, hey, we're saying you've approved your loan, we're just confirming you've received your letter of acceptance, and then great news, she's got a personal loan. Happy days. Vicky's really excited. And then she gets a message that says, your NAB account's been suspended. Click here to re-verify your data. So there's some key differences here. There's no name like we were using for Vicky previously. We were just providing her information before, and now we're requesting her to take an action and click a link. But the fact that it's been received into the same thread of messages that NAB was sending it to, it's highly likely Vicky will click it. Now, this is just basically the smartphone, the criminal sending the message as NAB, and then the smartphone saying, hey, we've got messages from NAB here. We're just going to add that message into this stream, and therefore it adds to the legitimacy for Vicky. So if she was to click on that, we'll go through this again. We'll have a look through. What might she see? The first one is, this is the mobile phishing site. So it looks very genuine. Put in your NAB ID and your password. So that's stealing of the credentials. And then the theft of the personally identifiable information. These guys have upped the ante. They're asking to upload the documents or to take a little selfie with your personally identifiable information. So this is criminals really looking to leverage our response in order to gain that information. So then what happens, right? So they've got the information. So there's a few things that criminals could do. One, they could use that information to maybe pretend to be you and ring a banking call center, or try and update details to gain access to two-factor authentications like SMSs, or update mobile phones. Or they may go to the criminal marketplace to exchange this information. So, the criminal marketplace or the dark web, it's not something you're just going to fall into, and don't recommend going there. But think of it like the eBay for all the dodgy stuff that's out there. It's basically a supermarket for criminals. So this is just an example of one of the pieces, articles of information that's available based on personal details that have been stolen and are now being on-sold. So just like eBay, you get a vendor level 2, trust level 1. So 25 high quality premium Australian driver's licenses for $195 US. Really cheap, right? 25 high quality Australian passports, pack, very fresh scans, which means unlikely to have already gone through any type of application with an institution, which might indicate that it had already been detected as fraud and would flag. So very fresh is a high quality good. And again, $195 US for that. 100 high quality premium Australian fulls, which is full personally identifiable information, $200 US. So I guess we all have an understanding, right? If something is cheap or good value like that, then there's bulk in the market. So there's a lot of this type of information that is being traded, which talks to that low price point. So maybe it's business information. So in this instance, this is an auction style, and it is data that's been stolen from a business. So there's lots of information, several databases, and this is going for $50,000 starting price, or a price blitz. You can buy it right now for $100,000. And so they put that up as an auction. Or, the dark web is also catering for entry-level players. So for those people who maybe are interested to, work in this kind of area, and, by the way, this is not a career roadshow by any stretch of the imagination. But you could go and buy ransomware for $50 and then be able to deliver that out and start engaging in that type of activity. So the dark web's really opening up entry-level players into this sort of realm as well. So that's a little bit of a view of, I guess, the life cycle of what can happen with phishing, that initial lure looking for the credentials and then the personally identifiable information. There's another layer to it as well, and it's what I like to call clickbait. So basically clickbait is the criminals just looking for the click, and from there they can deliver malware onto your computer or device. So if we have a look again at this type of lure, we see very commonly this type of lure is used to send GOSI malware, which is looking for banking credentials, which is why we often promote it as being, you know, a threat because it impacts people's bank accounts. It appears to come from Energy Australia, and at first glance, it looks very genuine. There's not too much about this on first glance that you would be worried about, but again, scratch the surface a little bit more, and we can see it actually doesn't come from Energy Australia. There's an underlying email address there that does not match that organisation. $979, oh my God, that's a massive bill. I definitely want to view this bill. So I'm going to click on that, and then no real sign off on this message, and that key player, I think, in this instance is there's dear customer. If you do business with Energy Australia, then they're going to know your name. So it's looking to identify those activities. So the sender's email address does not match the organisation, offers the threat or reward. And the threat in this case is we've got a high electricity bill. We want you to view it. There's the link or button to click off, no official sign off, and it's generically addressed. And it's really commonly used to spread malware. So there's quite a few of these different lures that get around. This one is very triggering. You know, who's not going to respond to the Australian Federal Police? You've been invited by the law court, by the judge, because of the law violation. You'd be like, oh my God, what law violation did I do? And people were very likely to click on that link and have that malware delivered. What I thought was really cute is you can unsubscribe from this list. So if you don't want any more pesky emails from the Australian Federal Police, just unsubscribe. And then we have our Dropbox. So this is often used as a vehicle to deliver malware. So and often coming from people we may even know, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But these are the sorts of messages that are being used to deliver malware in all sizes. So one of the common malwares that's being delivered is ransomware. So basically, if we're to click on that link, some encryption programming happens on our computer, and oops, and how cute are cyber criminals, right? They're like, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. And suddenly all of the data that is on that device or is networked, might spread out against the network, is encrypted, and people no longer have access to the files or the information that's held on the computer. It basically just becomes, you know, a brick with this sign at the front. So at this point, they've encrypted the details and they want some money in order to have that data unencrypted, and they're super helpful. The cyber criminals actually have a very good customer service model where they really look, once they have ransomed the files, they really look to make sure that they're supporting people to unencrypt their data, and they give everyone a lot of information. How long will it be until I have to pay? How can I pay? What will happen? You can contact us. They do a live chat in case anyone wants to have a chat and understand this a bit more, work out how they move forward, and then where to send the Bitcoin. In this instance, it is only $300 worth of Bitcoin, but we see ransomwares happening anywhere from $300 for larger organizations, over $1 million ransom for their information. And there's reports that say Australia and New Zealand are the #1 targeted countries for ransomware globally. So really important to understand what are our, what's our infrastructure, so our IT defenses against ransomware. How can we make sure that we're aware of messages that might be delivering it? And then do we have backups of our data that can easily replicate what we've lost? Because it might be if we've got great backups of our data, we don't have to pay the ransom. We can just use our backups to continue our business. So that's definitely something that's really impacting businesses in Australia. Business email compromise is a significant threat for Australian businesses, and a lot of you know, government organisations are reporting it's probably one of the biggest security threats facing Australian businesses that's out there. And basically, business email compromise is really where the criminal's looking to infiltrate the inbox for a whole range of malicious reasons. And it is considered, like ransomware, to be a data breach. So really important to be understanding how our inboxes are actually a critical component of our business process, and there needs to be a really a risk approach based on that. So this is a Microsoft Outlook Lua, and we've used that because it's a very common email tool that a lot of small businesses use. So if we have a look at this and using those characteristics that we've applied to the other emails, we can see this basically has everything. So it's definitely not from Microsoft. There's some unusual sign-in activity, an IP address from South Africa, like, don't recognize, verify your account, and sincerely the Microsoft Office team. If we were to click on that link, it would take us to a very genuine looking login. It does have German at the top, but it does have the word Microsoft in there. And the criminals are really looking for an individual or a business to put in their business email and then the password, and then they would have access to those details. Unless there's two-factor authentication, which is turned on to the email, which means in addition to the email and the password, you would need to provide something that you know, something that you have, or some kind of biometric feature to be able to log in, which just really adds that extra level of protection for those email accounts. So what can happen if a email is compromised? Let's have a look. So basically, we saw before the Dropbox messages. So if a criminal is able to gain access to a business email, generally one of the first things they do is try and spam other people in the address book with other malware, because people are far more likely to click on a message from Joe down the road that they know than from a random organization. So this just takes spear phishing to the next level. So this is an example which came in last week into NAB. So this was someone who did business with NAB, and then a whole heap of NAB bankers received this message asking them to click on the box, view the transfer, you sent some files, and heads up, this transfer expires in 4 days. So there's a bit of a threat with that as well. So that's one thing that can happen. They use your address book to spread more malicious software. The other thing that can happen is the interception or updating of payment details. So this is a scenario where Julie is looking to buy a house and Barry is her solicitor. So Julie and Barry have had a chat this one day. They're getting ready for settlement for the exchange of the contracts, and she needs to pay her deposit. All's looking great. She's really excited to be moving in and buying her dream home. So they're on the phone. Then Barry sends the message and says, hey, great to speak to you. Please find attached the contract of sale. Here's our trust account details. Good to go. About 5 minutes later, though, Julie receives a second email that says, hi, Julie, I'm sorry. My email where I sent you the contract of sale, I had the wrong trust account detail. Here's the new account. So Julie's like, okay, no worries. So she sent the money to that account. 3 days later, Barry rang and said, hey, Julie, where is your deposit? Because, you know, we need to exchange. And she's like, Barry, I sent it the other day to the account you sent through. And panic ensued at that point. It's like, she sent it, Barry doesn't have it. Where has the money gone? So after Julie had sent that money to the account under the control of the criminal, it was very quickly sent offshore, and there was no recovery for Julie's money. She lost her $56,000, and investigated that Barry's email was actually compromised through a business email compromise, and the criminal was monitoring his email for exactly this type of exchange. And we see this happening in property, real estate, anyone that's dealing with large money. A lot of building works and those sorts of things are being targeted, and they're looking to alter those details to account under their control, so then they can move the money offshore. In this case, Julie's now pursuing Barry for the return of her money because it was his email that's compromised. But, you know, and his insurance potentially doesn't cover that. So, you know, that's a really, when we talk about not that emotional, like not just that financial toll, there's so many layers to that scenario that's wreaking so much havoc. This is another kind of example, but this is using phone. So basically, this is what happened with Brisbane City Council. So someone pretending to be a vendor of theirs called them and said, "Hey, we've updated our bank account details. Can you do that for on your side?" And they're like, "Yeah, great customer experience." And they updated the account details, and then they paid basically 9 fake invoices over 3 weeks. And the thing that I think is, boy, they're good payers, right? Whoever pays 9 invoices over 3 weeks, but anyway, good on Brisbane City Council. And they paid $450,000 to a fraudulent account, and they were only able to recover $42,000 of that. And then the chief internal auditor was dismissed as well. So all those layers, right? They've lost the money. That's going to impact the citizens of Brisbane, and also a person lost their job from this instance. So really important that there's an internal business process when it comes to payments, and particularly around updating of accounts. What is your process? How is the request received? What is the contact? And how do we validate that information to make sure we're updating that and we're certain it's the right information from the right people? All right, and then I guess the last theme of that is the CEO fraud. So this is where an email address is spoofed. So it's not taken over, but it might be faked. So in this instance, it's from NAB CEO 10112. So our new CEO, Ross McEwen, he sent a note to Stephen saying, "Hey, Stephen, what's our daily limit for international wires? I need to take care of outstanding payments. Let me know ASAP so I can forward the details." The interesting part about this is Stephen works in the international payments team. So our criminals actually done their research when it comes to sending messages and identified someone within an organisation who might be able to process a payment. And criminals are able to do things like that through mechanisms like LinkedIn or other platforms where we have our information, and then they can monitor the activity of individuals in the business and then make targeted attempts. I know of an example where we had where I heard of a CFO received an email from the CEO who's in Hong Kong at the time doing business, and the CEO was in Hong Kong. And the message said, "Hey, I just need to understand our banking scenarios or situation. We're going to do a deal here." So the CFO took a screenshot of all the bank account details and how much money was in the account and sent that back to the CEO. CEO very quickly responded back and requested over 2 days, 6 payments that were made totaling $1.2 million. So when the CEO returned, the actual CEO logged into the banking, realized $1.2 million was gone, was like, what's happening? And that whole exchange was done with a cyber criminal on a spoofed account. So they're now chasing down that money. There was no recovery, and they're now chasing down that money. And, you think about that, how impactful that would be and how that might minimize the ability for a business to move forward after an incident like that. So we know criminals are also really quick to act. So we've really seen them pivot very quickly when it comes to COVID. They're really looking for any vulnerability. This is from the Department of Health. It's got an attached document to click, so deliver some malware. If they're saying Medicare needs some donations. So if you'd like to make a donation, send your money to Medicare. Australian government assistance. So, in a time of crisis, people are looking for assistance. And these things, I think they're heinous. It's the worst possible act, I think, really leveraging the actions of the vulnerable. And then the Disease Control Centre or, Communicable Disease Management Policy or the click on the staff portal. So they're very quick to identify what was happening and then act on that to try and perpetrate more fraud. So these are the SMSs, and very much, leveraging that economic return or that reward that people were looking for during COVID. You're going to receive a refund, there's uncertain situations, click here. So there's a lot of that happening. So next, we're just going to have a little bit of a look, I guess, around what that, how social media might be playing into cybercrime as well. So we'll just have a little bit of a listen, and if my team can just make sure that we can hear the sound when this plays as well. Thank you. Nope.
Dag Fien. Dus, gewoon. Ik zie een school tegen Antwerpen.
Ja.
Insecten.
Alsjeblieft.
Ik voel 2 insecten op je rug. Kan dat?
Ja, vlinders.
Slovenie?
Zo,
Een moto. Oranje.
Pats erop.
Zenit.
Oui, oui, bien.
Je hebt een vriendin. Julie de...
Ja.
Een boeiend liefdesleven. 3, 4 zelfs.
De 4e, daar zwijg ik meestal over, dus dat weten niet veel mensen.
Hoe is mijn spierscheur? Maison rouge, balcon blanc. Ja. Ik zie geld, ik zie transacties. Maar kent je rekeningnummer van buiten? Ik denk dat ik het wel weet. Die staat wel negatief op je bankrekening.
Ja?
9-7. Last month, you spent €200 on alcohol. Vorige maand €300 aan kleding gespendeerd. 8,
Ja.
5. Voor een huis dat van eigenaar gaat veranderen. €795.000.
Ja, maar eigenlijk.
41.
Ja.
Is dat juist?
Ja, dat is juist. Oh my god. Oh nee. Ah, dat is, ik weet niet hoe eng.
Okay, so that's just a little interesting snapshot into, you know, how much information we provide in the open web. So, you know, criminals can actually get a lot of information about individuals and businesses just by what we post ourselves. But, you know, we've painted a fairly bad picture, but it's not all bad news. And there are some really easy steps you can take to stay safe. So we're going to run through some of those now. So basically, just like we lock our doors when we leave home or our business, and we lock our cars, and we have, you know, protection for our physical assets, and we're used to that, you know, we're so entrenched with looking after those things. It's just about establishing and adopting a similar set of security principles that you can apply to your technical doors. So the Australian Signals Directorate, or our National Intelligence Agency, has released an Essential 8. And these are the foundational approaches to protecting your business from cyber attacks. And I won't take the time to go through all of these now. I'll send it out in the pack that we'll share after this session. But it's some really easy activities. So, you know, patching applications. So when your software is ready to do an upgrade, making sure you allow it. Using that 2-factor authentication, daily backups of important data. Some of these things are just little business activities or, you know, principles that can be put in place, which will go a long way from protecting against the threats. As well as understanding from a technology, people and process. So technology from a NAB perspective, if you're a NAB customer and a business customer, making sure you're aware of the opportunity of NAB Connect and the additional layers of security that platform provides businesses by having security tokens, payment limits, segregation of duties and multiple authorizers. And then your people. Like what we've done today is just having an opportunity for them to be aware of what's happening, what are the threats, and then what is their call to action. So how can they be aware of what this suspicious message looks like? Use different login passwords across different platforms, make sure everyone has their own login details, use different computers to create and approve transactions, and then have some sort of an awareness program in place so that people can be aware of what to look out for. And then that process. So validate new accounts or changes to payment instructions by calling on a known or publicly listed number. Have an agreed process for making payments to executives, and then ensure business risk reviews, including the topics of cybersecurity, are established in your business. All right, so if you want more information or support, we have that at nab.com.au security, which is available for anybody. We have training, we have articles, a toolkit, which we'll send out after this session as well, and daily updated alerts that can help you even formulate a bit of an awareness program for your teams. Report cybersecurity incidents to the Australian Cyber Security Centre at cyber.gov.au. And then there's more cybersecurity training support at the cyber.gov.au, including some really good social tips for security around social media and social networking apps as well. And, you know, finally, if you have anything which has impacted your banking, please contact your banker immediately. Make sure you let the bank know, because reporting of that is critical in the timeliness of being able to attempt recovery for any money that's been sent out or any credentials that have been stolen. So just make sure you contact your bank if you find yourself in a situation at all. So that is the end of our formal session today. Thanks for your time. This is really a snapshot of what's happening in the environment and what we're seeing impacting our customers. And it might just be a starting point to get you thinking about how this might apply to you and your business. I'm going to open for questions now. If anyone has questions, just pop them in the Q&A and then we'll run through them. So I've just got here. And thank you. So I don't have a name, but thanks for the question. It's what type of industries are most targeted when it comes to cyber scams? And the answer is all of them. I actually asked Rachel Falk, who's the CEO of the Cyber Security Research Centre, this very question just a couple of weeks ago when we were recording a podcast, and she said, no organisation, large or small, is immune from cyber attacks and scams. Maybe the difference is who is attacking who. You know, we think about the actors involved in cybercrime, so whether it's state-based or organised crime, or, you know, whether they're part of like a social movement, then that might be based on, you know, who's attacking who. But every single industry, no matter small or large, is being threatened by cybercrime, and that means individuals as well. So question here, yep, can you do anything after you've realised that you made the mistake of clicking on a clickbait or a suspicious link? So that's a great question. So it would depend on what happened next. So for example, if the screen came up with a ransomware alert, then it's unlikely that there's any remediating activity you can do right at that time. You know, the options are you've got to back up, throw your device out and start again, or, you know, negotiate with the ransom people. But if you've clicked something and you're unsure, then running your virus scan to make sure that there's nothing suspicious, monitoring how your computer is behaving. And if you think that something has been deployed on your computer, you can go and ask for specialist IT support around how you might remediate that. Thanks for that question. So what type of anti-spyware should we use? And is there one that NAB would recommend? So great question. So NAB doesn't have any recommendations around anti-spyware, but we should use anti-spy and antivirus as part of our complete package. We're not in a position to recommend any specific brands, but if you go to cyber.gov, they do have a lot of information around, I guess, those defence and infrastructures that would help business. Yeah, so if the first thing that you should do if you suspect that your banking has been compromised is reset your password, because the password is that element that's been compromised, and by resetting that password, then that basically takes the control back into your hands. Then depending on whether you've got business banking platform or personal banking, it would be using some of those controls to turn off any ability to make payments, you know, stopping the cards or blocking the cards, turning off transfers outside of your accounts, and then contacting your bank. And then your bank will talk you through, you know, resolving anything from a technical or product nature. But yeah, definitely you can do those blocks and then call your bank. Or call your bank and then do your blocks while you're waiting for them to answer. So just reading as they're coming through. So thanks so much for all of your questions. So yeah, what action should I take as soon as I realize my business email has been compromised? So similar scenario, reset your password. That basically means that the control of that, account is back in your hands. And then also checking for rules. So what a criminal will often do is set up rules so that messages are going to their inbox. So there'll be auto forward rules or auto reply rules or auto delete rules. And then delete those rules. And then unfortunately what can often happen is they might use an email account to send out messages from your account, but then they will delete those messages. So it can be hard to understand who may have received emails. But looking in your sent items should also be an activity so you can understand if any messages have been sent that you didn't personally authorize or have sent, account details and those sorts of things. And then if account details have been sent, reporting those accounts to the banks that might be on there, and then probably sending a follow-up email to anyone who has received a message, just letting them know that you're aware that that's happened, and then going to the report cyber team. So the report cyber team will be able to talk you through all of those steps and those consequences around that business email compromise. But resetting the password, stopping the rules, and assessing for anything that's been sent out are probably some of those initial things. Just reading through. So what happens if I accidentally clicked on a phishing link? So if you accidentally click on a phishing link and it takes you to a page that looks like a banking login page, but you haven't provided any details, probably just put a scan over your device to make sure that there was no viruses that might have infected. But if you haven't provided any information, you can report that and then just delete that message. So question 7, what is the government approach to supporting protecting people from cyber? So that's a great big question. So basically, the government has recently put out its Cyber 2020 report, which is a 58-page document. We did have a skim through today. And, it's talking about investment for government, investment for business, and investment for individuals. I will add the link into our handout to that Cyber 2020 report so that you can have a look at it. But the Australian Cyber Security Commission, together with the Joint Cyber Security Commission, have a lot of resources available to support businesses, and they're looking to uplift that support as well. So this particular webinar was advertised on Facebook. How would I detect a genuine offer versus cybercrime bait? Obviously, it didn't look suspicious, hence signing up. Yeah, I mean, look, that's a great question, and there's no definitive answer on that. I think the thing would be, what is the organisation or the individual promoting, and does it align? So we often see with this clickbait sales, it's like Dick Smith's, recommending people buy Bitcoin. So, the messaging isn't aligning with what they're selling. But any organisation that is putting out a promotion, you should be able to go to their website and find a way to take advantage of that promotion. So for example, if this was promoted on Facebook, you'd be able to go to the NAB website and find that promotion and verify that it was genuine. Because there's stuff coming up on Facebook which are fake accounts. And when I say Facebook, all of the social media platforms. So criminals are looking for those trusted organizations to pretend to be them to get likes. So it's just probably like if you get a push notification of an email or an SMS, don't respond to those. Go through to your app or go and log in online or call that organization. If we get a text message, we don't respond to that text message. We go through our normal channels, similar to if you have something that comes up on a social media channel. you know, that's great information. And then you can verify that by going through to the genuine website of that organisation. And then last one is, have you seen a spike in cybercrime since more employees are working from home? I haven't seen any industry stats around a spike. I think there has been a lot more activity. We saw from those COVID-themed phishing messages that was a rise, but I haven't seen any reports as yet relating to specifically around COVID. You know, my gut feel would probably be yes. There has been a spike, but I don't know if that's attributed to people from working from home or just because the criminals have got really busy looking for vulnerabilities that the pandemic has kind of exposed. All right, well, thank you so much for your time and for those questions. That was awesome. So that wraps up my part of the program. So Will, I'll hand back over to you.
Great, we got the unmute working. Tara, thanks so much for sharing with us your knowledge and practical tips on how we can be safe online. That video was certainly fairly confronting watching that, and judging from the questions from the group, this is clearly a prominent consideration within the business community. We are going to send through a copy of this presentation, so feel free to share it with your business network so that they can also benefit from the content as well. We've got a number of other sessions coming up that you might be interested in. If you'd like to register for any of these upcoming webinars, please visit the link displayed on your screen. Just a reminder, if you'd like to connect with us, please call and visit our website anytime. Finally, if you liked what you saw today, please let us know. There's a survey that's going to pop up when you close out of the webinar. We'd really appreciate your feedback. Look forward to seeing you on the next few sessions. Take care, stay safe, and thanks again.